Good morning, girls. It's so nice to see you. It's a brand new year, 2024, and we just thought what a great way to start the new year with a new series. And we've decided to do our new series on the 10 Commandments. And you sometimes think to yourself, what in the world, how relevant is this in our year 2024? You know, this moral code that was given to nomadic people in the late Bronze Age, peasants in a desert, does it have any relevance today? And I would say yes, yes, yes. So the 10 Commandments is found in Exodus. It's also found in Deuteronomy and referenced throughout the Bible. They are only 300 words long. And it's so interesting that the foundations, that the 10 Commandments are the foundations of the legal systems of the Western world. So you look at the legal systems in the Western world, the 10 Commandments are the foundation of them. They are simple 10 rules. They embrace family rights, they embrace the rights of God, and they embrace the rights of the individual. They were written about 3,500 years ago. And I've never thought of them. I've just thought them as rules. But, you know, I was reading one commentator and he said, have you ever considered that this was a love letter from the most powerful love letter that could be written from a creator to his creation? It's one of the most powerful expressions of love. These are statements that are all-encompassing, touching every aspect of human life, because he is the all-knowing God and he has created us. So I'm just going to read the 10 Commandments. We'll go through them quickly, and then today we're going to focus on the first one. So, and the Lord, I'm taking it from Exodus 20. The Lord spoke these words, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make yourself any image. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your mom and dad. Do not kill. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not give false testimony against your neighbor. And do not covet your neighbor's possessions. That's the 10 rules that were given. And, you know, when I look at this, I think to myself, wow, you know, these are extraordinary, supernatural rules that were given. Imagine if today you were given a task to write something that would never go out of date, to write something that would stand the test of time for 3,500 years. We would really struggle to do that. But God has given Moses these things. These are extraordinary, supernatural clarity to these 300 words. They are God-given, they are universal, and they are instructions to all people in all time, and they are never obsolete, and they never go out of date. Quite incredible. Basically, we have lots and lots of connections. We look at our world today, and we have a world that's very connected. We have so many friends in social media. We're so well educated. We're very scientific. But as we find out that the people who lived 3,500 years ago, we might feel so advanced, so well connected, but we still have the same sins, the same vices, and the same problems that follow us. And we've had these problems since the creation of time. Ever since Adam and Eve sinned and God put them out of the garden, we have been born with sin. And so the same vices that tripped them up 3,500 years ago are still the same things that trip us up. Basically, these 10 Commandments were custom made for all of human nature, and they were given to us by our very own Creator. They were for all seasons, all centuries, all cultures, and they are universal. There's an irony here that we want to free ourselves. We think, oh, we're past the 10 Commandments. We don't need the 10 Commandments anymore. We should rid ourselves from all of this. But yet, in our society today that's trying to cancel so many different things, cancel this, cancel that, we find ourselves, our society is becoming less and less trusting, less and less safe, and they're full of fears, full of anxiety, full of mental anguish. And it's because they have tried to rid themselves of all the rules that they don't think they need anymore. But God knows what humans are like. He understands us, and he knows us so well. So we look at today's society, And today's society is quite scary, actually, you know. Society hasn't just, it's like a massive ship. It hasn't just slipped from its moorings and is just kind of rocking around in the harbour there, but it has lost its rudder and it has lost its compass, and it's drifting aimlessly. If we look back over the last 40 years and we look at what society has done, it has changed so drastically. There's been such a decline in so much. You know, when we look out at 2024, we are so very well connected, but we have never been more isolated. Sin has been watered down, but our God is the same God, and he holds us to the same accountability. Sin is excused, sin is permissible, but God stands above it all and says, no, I don't change, and these are my rules, and they don't change. We seem to be so advanced, so scientific, so well connected, and yet we fall, and we realize that actually we need a God that can love us unconditionally. So, what are the 10 Commandments? The 10 Commandments, basically, there are 10 of them. The first 4 actually look at our relationship to God. So the first 4 are all about looking to God, honoring him, respecting him, and it's all about our relationship to him. The next 6 are our relationship to our own human family, to the people in our world. So in some ways it's simple. It's like love God in the first 4 and love others in the next 6. You know, in Matthew 22, verse 36, people tried to trick Jesus and said, you know, Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus said, well, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This summed up the first 4 commandments. And then Jesus goes on to say, and you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. And that actually sums up the last 6. So Jesus was the same. He combined them all into one thing. Love God with all your heart and love others as you would love yourself. So these 10 commandments, when were they given? So just a little recap about what happened. You know, I'm not going to go through the whole story, but you know, Jacob is there in Israel. He's with his family, and we know the story how Joseph is sold into slavery. He goes down to Egypt, and so this very dysfunctional little family that has done all sorts of wrong things is living in the promised land. And of course, there's a famine, and you know how God eventually brings the whole family down, and he had already sent Joseph ahead of him. And so Joseph goes to Pharaoh and says, you know, this is my family. There's these 70 people, you know, they're shepherds. Could you let them live in Goshen? So they go and live in Goshen, and they go live there happily. And so God has protected this unique people that he calls the Jews, this unique people, these Hebrews, this wonderful family, and he takes them and plants them in Egypt. And just before Joseph dies, Joseph says, you know, God has revealed to me that he is going to bring you back to the promised land. And when you go, will you take my bones with you? And so these people live here for the next 400 to 430 years. They live in Goshen, and they begin to grow and they begin to multiply, and God blesses them. And you know, they're so unlike us. You know, if we lived somewhere away from our family, we'd be able to go online, we'd be able to read books, we'd be able to find out different things. But all they have is the stories of what God has done for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And they share these stories again and again. They have their own little faith. They're living up in Goshen, and they're doing their best. 400 years have now passed. They have been living. Now, if I look back to 400 years in Great Britain, 400 years ago, there was a group of people that jumped on the Mayflower, and they went to America. They were going to find a new life, and that was the beginning of the story of America. That's a long time ago. Since then, there's been many kings, many queens. There's been many battles, many wars. And so that's really how long 400 years are. And we pick up this story that these people are still longing and looking for the time that God is going to bring them back. I wonder if they've given up. They're now slaves. They've grown so numerous that the Egyptians are jealous of them, and so they are using the Israelites as slaves. And so their life is very hard, very, very difficult. And they're longing and wondering, will we ever be able to carry these bones back? Will God ever bring us back to the promised land? And they were trying to encourage each other, but they're living downtrodden life of slavery in a foreign land. We know the story of Moses. We know that Moses was this promised child, that how God rescued him and saved him, and he grew up in the palace. And when Moses is about 40, he knows that there's a calling on his life, because his mom would tell him, you are a special child. God is going to somehow use you. You're going to lead our people. I can imagine Jochebed said many great things over him. And, through different circumstances, Moses steps out of line and has to run for his life. And he finds himself in this desert in Sinai. And he's living his life there thinking, wow, I've really blown it. I was supposed to save my people, and here I am living out here. He lives for 40 years in the desert. And, one day he's wandering around looking at the sheep. He's now married someone. He hasn't married a Hebrew girl. He's married Jethro's son. And he's there, and he sees this bush on fire, and he walks towards the bush. He finds it unusual, and he was curious, and he goes towards it, and the Lord speaks to him. And the Lord says to him, speaks from the bush, and Moses says, who are you? And he said, I am that I am. And in that word, it's a present tense. He's saying, I am still the God of Abraham. I am still the God of Isaac and Jacob, and I am still your God. And I am the God who will lead you. I have seen the people. I've heard their cries, and I'm coming to lead them. And he asks Moses to take off his sandals because he's standing on holy ground. And so we find this, Moses is there. He argues with God. He tries to talk God out of this plan. He explains that he's not the right person, but God says, no, you are the right person because your heart is right. 40 years ago, Moses was probably the right person physically. He probably was the right person in many aspects, but God could see his heart, and his heart was wrong. And he has been in this desert for 40 years, and he is in the right place at the right time. And the Lord says, I see your heart. And Moses, you are a humble man. You're not that proud, arrogant young prince of Egypt. You are now this humble man, and I want you now to lead them. So I find it fascinating, he goes back. We know the story and the plagues and everything. And, now we find that Moses has indeed led them. He has taken them out. They've had seen the miracles of the plagues. They have actually plundered all the slave masters who they were slaves to. God said, go and ask them for their gold and jewelry before you leave. And God allowed them. God opened up the Egyptians' hearts, and they gave over all their jewels. So this group of people, these slaves, these 2 million people now, from 70 to 2 million, have now left the land. They have left rich. They've left together. They've left united. They've seen the sea part. They've seen the Lord strike water. They've seen manna. And now they find themselves, it's about 3 or 4 months since they were led out. They now find themselves at the foot of this Mount Sinai. They find themselves here. Moses is there. Their 80-year-old leader standing there. Moses looks his eye, and I can see Moses thinking, there's the bush. There's the bush. I wished I had never gone over to that bush that day, because look at the trouble that bush has given me. Look at the awesome responsibility I have. But Moses is there, and God is true to his word. He said, I will bring you and the people back to this spot. And this is the spot that God says, I am now going to give you the rules to live. Because you see, these people, there's 2 million of them. They don't know how to live as free people. They have lived as slaves. They have lived as people who other people tell them what to do. They have no idea what to do. They just know how to obey. And if they don't obey, they'll get whipped. They just know what it's like to obey. They have no individual thought. They don't understand anything. They also are people who have had their own stories about their God. They have actually seen God work in the last few months and lead them out of Israel. But they have been surrounded and grown up with all the pagan gods. Egypt was a place, and it, for many years, if you read up about the history of Egypt, there was so much astrology, so much occult practice, so many gods. They had gods for absolutely everything. If you were going to harvest a field, there was a god to worship. If you were barren, there was another god to sacrifice to. If you wanted success, there was a different god. So God is looking at these people and thinking, right, these are my people. These are my holy, peculiar, unique people. They have come from a land of slavery. They have come from a culture full of gods. They're going into the promised land, which is also full of slavery. And I have them here, and I want them to know that I am the true God. So we're going to focus on the first commandment. The first commandment says, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt and out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. So this very first point I want to make, it speaks about the exclusivity of God. God is God. He is not just a Lord. He is not just a different God. He is the King of Kings. He is the Lord of Lords. He is the only God, and he is a jealous God. And so he is saying to Moses, I am your God. And here's Moses. He's with this group of people, and this is the first commandment, that he is their God. And he knows, God knows, Moses doesn't know, but God knows the Canaan land they're going into. He knows the promised land. He knows the promised land is full of all sorts of other gods they haven't come across in Egypt. He knows that they're going to bump into the Syrian god of possessions, the god of Mammon. He knows they're going to encounter the god of Baal, the Canaanite god, the god of power. He knows that they're going to come against the god of the Ammonites, the Molech god. And there's so many other gods that I could name here. And God knows that those gods are waiting. And he wants this unique group of people to know him, to know that he is the only God, that they will be tempted to find different gods, but he is unique and he is God. God is saying in this first one that he has to be unique and he has to be exclusive. You know, the people have been surrounded by many, many, many different gods, but God will not be in competition with them. This commandment sets up the people of Israel for all the other 9 commandments. If they can get this one right, all the others will fall into place. You know, as the sun is in the center of our solar system and all the planets and all the moons of the planets all revolve around the sun, so it has to be that God is the center of our world, and he is the center of everything we do, and we must travel around what God wants us to do. You know, today in 2023, is our world orientated around God? Or is he just a random meteor that just comes into our solar system on a Sunday and we meet him and then he goes away again and we get on with our world? God has to be the center of everything we do. You know, I said that in today's society, you know, it's like this massive ship that hasn't just slipped from its moorings, but it's lost its rudder and its compass. You know, a rudder is a small part of the ship, but it's very vital it doesn't matter how large the vessel is. If it could be a big cruise ship or one of those large cargo ships that you see in traveling around the world taking goods, a rudder gives the ability to direct a ship. And you know, we have lost in our society has lost the ability to be directed in a godly manner. And we've also lost our compass. The compass is what allows us to align ourselves. It allows us to align ourselves towards true north. The unchanging true north. You know, if you look at a compass, there's north, south, east, and west, and then there's north at the top there. And a compass, if you look at the compass, it will always align itself and it will point exactly to north. And sometimes in our world, we look at the north. And you know, sometimes if you look at a compass, there is a true north, but there's also a north-northeast and a northeast and a northwest-west. And then there's a north-northwest, and there's all sorts. There's about 6 or 7 different variations. There's a true north, there's a true east, and there's a true west. But everywhere in between, there's east north, there's east northeast, there's northeast in the other, and north. And sometimes in society we think, oh, we're doing good. We're actually kind of facing north. We're maybe doing northwest, or we're maybe doing northeast. You know, we're thinking of different ways, and we think we've got a little bit of north in there. But the Lord is saying, I need to be your compass. I need you to align yourselves to me and to no one else. We need to we need to look at it and make sure that our rudder guides us daily in our quiet time. And we need to take our true north from the Lord. All of these other 9 commandments revolve around the first one. The second point is, it speaks about a personal God. He wants to be in relationship with you and with you, with me. Because it says, I am the Lord your God, and your God and your God. He isn't a distant God. He longs to be in a relationship with us. He is the great I am. That's what he said to Moses. I am the great I am. He didn't say, something that's in the past tense. He said something that's in the present tense. It is written in the present tense because we can call on God for whatever we need him to be. I am your healer. He speaks to the sick and the ill. I am your husband. He speaks to the widowed and the single and those who have been destitute or abandoned. When he says, I am your friend, he is speaking to the lonely. When he says, I am your shield, he is speaking to those who are vulnerable and need protection. When he says, I am your portion, he is speaking to those who don't think they have enough in their finances, but knowing that God is enough. When he says, I am the bread of life, he is speaking not just to the naturally hungry, but he's speaking to the spiritually hungry and says, I am enough. The temptation of these nomadic people that Moses was looking after, that were wandering everywhere, God knew that they were vulnerable. The temptation for these vulnerable people is that they will suddenly want a quick fix because they have grown up seeing the nation has always gone for a quick fix, when instead of solving the problem, be like, go and worship at that temple. Go and bow down to this. There's a quick fix. Go and do this. Go and do that. And he knows these people are going to be vulnerable. Very early on, these people begin to grumble. These people begin to complain. And the Lord knows them and says, wow, it doesn't take them long. They soon forget the miracles. They soon forget crossing the Red Sea. They soon forget the life they have. And the Lord knows they're vulnerable. And he says, I want to be your God. I want to be your personal God. And so in today, we are tempted to try all sorts of new things. Do we want him to be the I am in every season of our life that we find ourselves in? Do we sometimes, when problems come, do we compare ourselves to our colleagues and somehow feel unworthy and somehow think we're missing out, and maybe I'll try what they're trying. Maybe that'll be a good idea. Maybe I'll have a go at this. And we add on, but God says, I am enough. I am your God, I am the only God, and I will be enough, because you are to be a peculiar people. And there's something really, really important about this, that they are a peculiar people set apart. And the Lord today still says to us, you are a peculiar people, and I want to be your God. The third thing it speaks about a God who redeems and restores. He says, I am the God who brought you out of slavery. Yes, we haven't been brought out of slavery from Egypt, but we've been brought out of slavery from the sin that we were tied to. We've been brought out of areas that we really struggle with. The Lord has set us free and brought us into a wonderful place. The Lord is passionate about us. And he looks at these people, he thinks, these people need some guidance. These people need rules. I'm going to give them 10 guidelines. These 10 guidelines are going to help them. J. John has a wonderful quote in his book. It says, we soon realize that nothing is quite as enslaving as total freedom. Can you imagine if we decided that tomorrow there was an edict went out from Parliament that said, you know what, we're removing all rules, all signs from the roads. You have total freedom. You don't need to be bound by the highway code anymore. You don't need to look at any of the notices, the paintings on the roads. You can do what you like. You want to drive on the right side or the left side, whatever your preference is, go ahead. That would be total freedom, but it would be total chaos. And we would be so frightened and scared to go out, because total freedom doesn't make us feel secure. And the Lord looked at these people and thought, I need to give them a framework. I need to give them guidelines so that they can work within the parameters of these guidelines. It says that he is a jealous God. And he's a jealous God, not jealousy like we know. When we're jealous, we think, I want to get mad at someone. I'm envious. And it stirs up all sorts of hatred and anger and resentment within us. But the Lord's type of jealousy is a passionate one. It's not a possessive one like humans have. It's a passionate one. He's desperate for a relationship with us. He's desperate that we talk to him every day. He longs for us to come close to him and have that quiet time and to be with him. These people have been set apart by the Lord. These commandments that he's given them were not designed to make them moral, but they were designed to make them stand out and be different from all the other nations. They were to be a city on a hill. They were to be the salt in their world. They were to be a peculiar people, set apart. It's not that rules just made them different. Rules made them moral. Rules make them different. So that in their nations, people are like, we've heard about you. Wow, you're different. You're a peculiar people. I'm curious, what is this all about? And even today in 2024, God calls us to be different. He calls us not just to abide by rules. And people say, oh, Christianity is a bunch of rules. No, Christianity is when we live in a beautiful relationship with Jesus, and we love God and we love others, and we do unto others as we would want them to do unto us. And so that creates curiosity among people. People are wanting to know, what is it about you? What is it? It says in John 12:32, if I, Jesus is speaking, if I be lifted up in your world, if I be lifted up in your places of work, in how you do life, then I will draw people unto myself. All you need to do is lift me up and I will draw people. Are we peculiar? Do we stand out? Are we different from everybody else? Jesus says in John 14:6, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. He's very exclusive. He's saying there is no other way. I am the only God. I will be your God, and I will be the God that will constantly redeem you, constantly restore you. You mess up, you slip up, you break the rules. I'm here to restore you. I'm here to redeem you because I love you with a passionate heart. And so that's some of the things I wanted to say. We need to stand out and be different. And I love it when I hear people speaking about King's Church and like, yeah, it's a different church. You guys are so welcoming. And I'm like, do you know what? We're welcoming not just on your first visit, but your second visit, and your third visit. This is just who we are. We got lots of, we gave out hampers at Christmas time. It was such an honor for us to partner with the city and give hampers to people that needed them. And they came back saying, wow, we didn't realize church could be like this. We can't believe you took the time to write handwritten notes. How the stuff you gave us was really beautiful. It was so lovely. And we're a peculiar people. We're going against the grain. Everyone's about the living crisis and save more and hoard more and don't share and look after yourselves and take care of yourselves. We're like, no, we want to take care of you. We're called to be a peculiar people, a people that stand out. And that's what God was saying to them. So in the summary, when he says, I am your God, the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, you will have no other gods before you. There's a few things we need to note. We need to note we worship a particular God, no other God. He is the only God that we are going to worship. We worship a personal God. He is your God. He will supply your needs. He will hear you in the quiet moments in the middle of the night when you're struggling, when you have all those worries, all those anxieties, that bad news, that difficult phone call. He is your God. He is the great I am, and he is unchanging in that. The third thing, we worship a saving God. He wants to save you, redeem you, restore you. And we worship a passionate God, a God that longs to be in relationship with you, a God that loves you unconditionally, a God that is there for you in every season, in every moment, 24/7. There's a lovely, wonderful quote that I saw about God. He is revealed in Scripture. That's true. He is validated through the miracles that happen. Yep. He is confirmed by history, not just the Bible, but historians have confirmed him. And he deserves our undivided loyalty. We need to love him with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our mind. So I'm just going to leave you with a few questions to ponder. Who do you praise? Who gets your highest praise? Who do you count on when things are going a bit rocky, when things kind of aren't what they expected? Who do you count on? Who do you call on? Who do you call on when you get that difficult phone call, when you find out that difficult piece of information? Who do you call on? And who do we thank and give credit to for all the wonderful blessings we have in our life? Who do we thank and who do we give credit to? I'm excited for this journey of the 10 Commandments. We're going to have lots of different speakers coming and speaking and sharing. But remember, this is the most important commandment. Everything else hinges on this. And if we can get this right, everything else will fall into place. Thank you so much, and look forward to this new series that we're going to be embarking on together. God bless you.